With my mother-in-law having moved in, you are no longer the lady of the house. Serena shrieked those words as she hung her mother's clothes in my closet. You're going to have to ask permission even to go to the bathroom. My dresses tumbled to the floor one after another, pushed by her impatient hands. She didn't even look at me. She acted as if I were invisible, as if my presence in my own room meant nothing. I stood in the doorway with a mug of still hot coffee in my hands. I had just come upstairs to change my top because I had splashed some tomato sauce on it while cooking. I was not expecting to find this. I was not expecting to see my daughter-in-law emptying my closet as if it were hers. Behind her stood her mother, Mrs. Eleanor, a tall woman with grey hair pulled back in a tight bun, thin lips and cold eyes. She watched me with a mixture of curiosity and contempt, as if she were assessing how long it would take me to give up. I didn't say anything. The words were stuck in my throat. Serena pulled out another of my dresses, the blue one with white flowers that Robert gave me 3 years ago, and tossed it carelessly onto the bed. Then she hung up a beige sweater that smelled like mothballs. Her mother's sweater. You're going to have to get used to it, Emma. From now on, things are going to be different here. Her voice was firm, almost cheerful, as if she were announcing good news. I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. I wanted to speak. I wanted to say that this was my house, that this was my closet, that no one had asked me anything. But when I opened my mouth, only a thread of a broken voice came out. Serena, I don't... She raised her hand without turning to look at me. I don't want to hear any complaints. My mother needs a decent place to live. I'm not going to leave her in that damp apartment she was in. Robert is already on board, so there is nothing more to discuss. Robert, my son, the man I raised, who I fed, who I stood by through every difficult moment of his life. He had agreed to this without even asking me, without even telling me. I swallowed and looked down. My fingers squeezed the coffee mug so tightly that I felt it could break at any moment. Mrs. Eleanor finally spoke. Her voice was scratchy, tired, but with a tone of authority that left no room for reply. Don't worry, Emma. I'm not going to be a burden. I just need a little space, a place where I can rest peacefully. I nodded without thinking. It was an automatic gesture, the same one I had repeated all my life when someone asked me for something. I always nodded. I always gave in. Serena slammed the closet door shut and turned to look at me for the first time since I had walked in. Her eyes shone with something I couldn't identify at the moment. Maybe it was triumph. Maybe it was contempt. Tomorrow we're going to reorganize the whole house. There are a lot of things that aren't useful anymore. We are going to need more space for Mum's stuff. She left the room without waiting for an answer. Mrs. Eleanor followed her, but before crossing the threshold she paused and shot me a quick glance. A look that said everything. She was here now, and she had no intention of leaving. I was left alone in my room. The coffee mug was still warm in my hands, but I no longer wanted to drink it. I looked at the open closet. My dresses were piled up on the floor, wrinkled, forgotten. In their place hung the clothes of a woman I barely knew. I sat on the edge of the bed and closed my eyes. This can't be happening, but it was happening. And the worst thing of all was that I hadn't done anything to stop it. That night, I prepared dinner as usual. I set the table, served the dishes, filled the glasses with fresh water. Robert arrived late, as had been his habit lately. He came in the door with his cell phone in his hand, without looking up, without saying hello. Serena and her mother were already sitting down. They had taken the main places at the table, the chairs with the best view of the living room. My chair. The chair where I had always sat since this house was built. I didn't say anything. I took the chair that was left, the one near the kitchen, the one we used for occasional visitors. Dinner passed in silence. No one asked how I was. No one thanked me for the food. Mrs. Eleanor ate slowly, chewing carefully, checking every bite as if looking for something wrong with it. Serena spoke softly with Robert, planning things that I couldn't quite hear. When they finished, they got up and left the plates on the table. I collected them in silence, washed them, dried them, and put them away. Then I cleaned the table, swept the floor, and turned off the lights. I went up to my room well past midnight. Mrs. Eleanor was already settled in the guest room, the one I had fixed up with so much care for when my friends or cousins came to visit. Now that room had an owner, and that owner was not temporary. I lay down on my bed, but I couldn't sleep. I stared at the dark ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. Footsteps in the hall, muffled voices, the creak of a closing door. The next morning I got up early as always. I brewed coffee, cut fruit, and took out the bread I had baked the day before. Everything was ready for breakfast. Serena came down first. She was wearing a pink robe, her hair was loose, and her eyes were still puffy with sleep. She poured herself coffee without saying good morning. Then Mrs. Eleanor arrived, walking slowly, leaning on the railing. I stood next to the stove, waiting. They sat at the table and started talking among themselves, completely ignoring me. They talked about furniture, about changes, about how they were going to redistribute the spaces. I just listened, my hands clasped over my apron. Then Serena got up and walked toward the kitchen. She opened the cabinet and frowned. "Emma, why do you keep so many old mugs here? This is full of useless things." She didn't wait for my answer. She began to take out the mugs, my mugs, the ones I had collected for years. She set them on the table carelessly. "We are going to donate all of this. There's no space to store things that no one uses anymore." I opened my mouth to protest, but again the words wouldn't come out. Mrs. Eleanor nodded in approval. "You are right, honey. We have to clean up. Start from scratch." Serena smiled. "Exactly, start from scratch." And at that moment, I knew that something inside me was about to break. Oh, what a wake-up call. 6 months before Serena brought her mother to live here, my life was different. Not perfect, but it was mine. I woke up every morning at 6. I made coffee in the coffee maker that my sister Julia gave me for my 50th birthday. I sat by the kitchen window and watched the yard as the sun began to warm the plants. Those were my minutes of peace, my minutes of silence before the house woke up. Then I watered the flowers. I had red geraniums in clay pots, jasmine climbing up the patio fence, and a small vegetable garden where tomatoes, basil, and cilantro grew. Every plant had its place, its routine. I knew their needs as I knew my own. The house was always clean, always tidy, not because anyone demanded it, but because I liked it that way. It gave me peace to see everything in its place, to know where everything was, to walk barefoot on the floors without worrying about dust or dirt. Robert had been living here with me since he married Serena. It was my idea. I offered to let them stay when they were still looking for a place to live. The house was big. It had 3 bedrooms, and I had been alone since my husband died 7 years ago. I thought it would be nice to have company. I thought it would be temporary, just until they saved up enough to buy their own place. But 2 years passed, and they never left. At first, everything seemed to work. Serena worked at an accounting office downtown. She left early and came back late. Robert had a mechanics shop 3 blocks from here. Sometimes he came home dirty with grease, his uniform stained, but always with a tired smile. I cooked for the 3 of us. I washed everyone's clothes. I cleaned the rooms, ironed Robert's shirts, folded Serena's blouses. It didn't bother me. It was my way of contributing, my way of feeling useful. But little by little, without me realizing it, things began to change. Serena started coming home with a different attitude. She no longer greeted me when she walked in. She no longer asked me how my day had been. She went straight to her room, closed the door, and didn't come out until dinner time. When we ate dinner, she checked her cell phone. She didn't speak. She didn't look at me. If I tried to start a conversation, she would respond with one-word answers. Yes? No. Maybe. Then she would return to her screen. Robert didn't talk much either. He had become quiet, distant. Sometimes I caught him looking at me as if he wanted to say something, but then he would look away and continue eating in silence. One day, 4 months ago, Serena came home with grocery bags. She dropped them on the kitchen table with a dry thud. I was preparing vegetable soup, my specialty. The smell filled the whole house. She opened one of the bags and took out cans of canned food, instant soups, and pre-cooked rice. Things we never bought. From now on, I'll do the shopping, Emma. You spend too much on unnecessary things. I looked at her, confused. I bought what I had always bought. Fresh vegetables, good quality meat, seasonal fruits, nothing expensive, nothing extravagant. But Serena, I only buy what we need to cook well. She interrupted me without raising her voice. We don't need to cook so elaborately, this is enough. Besides, we are saving for other things. She didn't say what things. She didn't explain anything more. She just put the cans away in the cupboard and left the kitchen. That night I served my soup as always. Robert ate without saying anything. Serena barely tasted a couple of spoonfuls and then pushed the plate toward the center of the table. It's too salty. It wasn't salty. I had tasted the broth before serving it. It was perfect, as always. But I didn't say anything. I just picked up her plate and took it to the sink. The following week, Serena brought more changes. She moved the furniture in the living room without asking me. The armchair where I used to sit and knit in the afternoons was now shoved against the wall. In its place, she put a new sharp-edged glass coffee table. This looks more modern, don't you think? I nodded, although I didn't like it. The glass was cold, impersonal, and that armchair held memories. My husband and I used to sit there and watch the news. Robert would fall asleep there when he was a kid after a long day of school. But what I thought no longer mattered. Then other changes came. Serena started inviting her friends over. They arrived in the afternoons, sat in the living room, laughed loudly, and left dirty glasses on the new glass table. I cleaned everything up after they left, wiped up the stains, and put away the dishes. They never introduced me. I was invisible to them, just the cleaning lady. One Saturday morning, while I was watering the yard, Serena came out onto the patio with a critical look. These plants are really neglected, Emma. You should prune them more often. I looked at my geraniums, my jasmine. They were beautiful, blooming as always. But they're fine, Serena. Look how many flowers they have. She shook her head. No, they're too big. They take up too much space. I'm going to call a gardener to take care of all this. She didn't call a gardener. She called a man who came with an electric trimmer and cut the branches carelessly. My jasmine was reduced to bare stems. The geraniums lost half their flowers. I watched everything from the kitchen window, my hands clasped on the edge of the sink, feeling something inside me wither along with my plants. Robert didn't say anything. When I asked him why he had allowed Serena to do that, he just shrugged. It's her house too, Mum. She has the right to change things. Her house too. Those words hurt me more than anything else. I bought this house with the money my husband and I saved during 30 years of work. The deed was in my name. But for Robert, for Serena, That no longer seemed to matter. Little by little, I shrank. I spoke less. I asked permission for things I used to do without thinking. Can I use the living room? Can I turn on the television? Can I invite my cousin Sophia over for coffee? The answer was almost always no, or, worse, a silence that meant no, without the need for words. I stopped sitting in the living room. I stayed in the kitchen or in my room. I stopped watching my favorite shows because Serena always wanted to watch hers. I stopped cooking the recipes I liked because she said they were too complicated, too expensive, too heavy. I stopped being me. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, Serena came with news that would change everything. I was sitting in the kitchen peeling potatoes when she walked in with a serious expression. "Emma, I need to talk to you." I put the knife down on the table and looked at her. My mother can't keep living alone. Her apartment is in really bad shape. Leaks, dampness, electrical problems. It's no longer safe for her. I nodded. I knew Mrs. Eleanor lived in an old building across town. Serena complained about it constantly. I understand. And are you going to help her find another place? Serena looked at me intently. No. She's coming to live here. My heart skipped a beat. Here? In this house? Yes. It's the best solution. She's 68 years old. Emma, she can't be alone. And we have the space. But we didn't have the space. The house had 3 bedrooms, one for me, one for them, and one for guests. If Mrs. Eleanor came, where would she sleep? How long would she stay? Serena, I understand you want to help your mother, but maybe we could look for another option. There is no other option. Her voice sounded final, definitive. I already talked to Robert. He agrees. We are bringing her things tomorrow. And she left the kitchen before I could say anything else. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls of my own house closing in on me. The next day, they arrived with a moving truck. They brought boxes, furniture, suitcases. Mrs. Eleanor walked in slowly, looking at everything with evaluating eyes. And so my true nightmare began. Mrs. Eleanor arrived on a Thursday afternoon, the moving truck parked in front of the house at about 3 o'clock. I was in the kitchen making lemonade when I heard the engine shut off and the doors close with a metallic bang. I went out onto the porch, wiping my hands on my apron. The sun was strong on the street. 2 men got out of the truck and opened the back doors. Inside were furniture covered with grey blankets, cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling, and black trash bags full of clothes. Serena got out of her car, parked behind the truck. Then she helped her mother out of the passenger seat. Mrs. Eleanor moved slowly, holding onto her daughter's arm, looking at the house as if she were evaluating every brick, every window, every detail. She wore a grey dress, closed low-heeled shoes, and a white scarf tied around her neck. Her hair was perfectly slicked back, pulled into that tight bun that gave her a severe look. Her eyes were small, dark, and piercing. When she saw me standing on the porch, she didn't smile. She just nodded slightly, as if it were a mandatory, mechanical greeting. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Eleanor. Welcome." My voice sounded weaker than I would have liked. She took a few steps toward me, releasing Serena's arm. "Good afternoon, Emma. I hope I'm not a bother." She said it in a tone that didn't sound sincere. It was a set phrase, rehearsed, said only because it was the correct thing to say at that moment. "It's no bother at all. This is your home now." I don't know why I said that. Maybe because it was what was expected of me. Maybe because I still believed that by being kind, things would work out better. Serena climbed the porch steps energetically. "We're going to start bringing the things up. Mom is going to stay in the guest room. I already straightened everything up in there this morning." This morning. I hadn't seen anything. I had gone out early to the farmer's market to buy fresh vegetables. When I returned, the guest room door was closed. I didn't dare open it. The men from the truck began to unload boxes, one after another, heavy, full, sealed with brown tape. They carried them up the stairs with noisy steps. The wooden floor creaked under the weight. I stood on the porch, not knowing what to do. I wanted to offer help, but Serena was already giving orders, directing the men, pointing out where to put everything. Mrs. Eleanor slowly entered the house. She stopped in the living room and looked around. Her eyes scanned the furniture, the walls, the hanging photographs. There was a photo of my husband and me on our wedding day. Another of Robert when he was 5, smiling with a missing tooth. Another of the whole family at the beach, 15 years ago, when we were still happy. She didn't say anything about the photos. She just kept walking towards the hallway that led to the bedrooms. Serena appeared behind me. "Emma, could you make some coffee? Mum always drinks coffee when she arrives at a new place. It helps her relax." "Of course, I'll prepare it right away." I went into the kitchen and put the coffee pot on the stove. My hands trembled as I measured the ground coffee. I didn't know why I was so nervous. It was just one more person in the house, just someone who needed help. But something about the way Mrs. Eleanor had looked at me made me feel uneasy. The coffee was ready in 5 minutes. I served it in one of my favorite mugs, a white one with hand-painted flowers. I put sugar on a small saucer and a silver spoon that had belonged to my grandmother. I carried the tray to the living room. Mrs. Eleanor was sitting in the main armchair, the one that used to be mine. Her hands were crossed in her lap, and she was looking out the window at the yard. "Here is your coffee, Mrs. Eleanor." She turned and looked at the mug. Then she looked at me. "Did you put sugar in it?" "Yes, it's here on the saucer." "I don't drink sugar. It upsets my stomach." "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Can I bring you another cup without sugar?" "Don't worry. I'll take it like this." She took the mug and drank a small sip. She made an almost imperceptible grimace, but didn't say anything else. I stood there for a few seconds, not knowing whether I should leave or stay. Finally, I backed away toward the kitchen. The men finished bringing up the boxes an hour later. Serena paid them $120 in cash, and they left. The truck started up, leaving a trail of black smoke that floated in the air before disappearing. The house was silent. A strange, thick silence, as if something invisible had changed. Robert arrived at 7 in the evening. He came in through the back door as always, his uniform stained with grease, his hair messy, his face tired. He stopped when he saw all the boxes piled up in the hall. "Did your mother-in-law already get here?" "Yes. She's in her room resting." He nodded and went straight to the bathroom to wash his hands. He didn't ask how I felt. He didn't ask if I needed help with anything. He just washed up, changed his clothes, and sat down in front of the television. That night, I prepared baked turkey with mashed potatoes and carrots. It was one of Robert's favorite meals. I thought maybe a good dinner would make things feel more normal. I set the table for 4. I served water in the glasses. I placed folded napkins next to each plate. When everything was ready, I called everyone to dinner. Robert sat in his usual spot. Serena took the seat across from him. Mrs. Eleanor came out of her room and approached the table. She looked at the available chairs. One was next to Robert. The other was at the head of the table. My place. She sat at the head of the table. I stood there with the platter of turkey in my hands. My place had been taken. I had to bring an extra chair from the kitchen and sit in the corner, almost separated from the rest of the table. No one said anything. I served the plates in silence. I passed the basket with rolls. I filled the glasses with more water. Mrs. Eleanor tried a bite of turkey. She chewed slowly, her lips pressed together. Then she put her fork down on the plate. "It's a little dry. I'm sorry. Maybe I left it in the oven too long." She didn't answer. She just pushed the plate forward a few inches. Serena ate quickly without looking up. Robert didn't say anything either. He just ate, looking at his plate, as if he were alone at the table. After dinner, I collected everything. I washed the dishes, put away the leftovers, and cleaned the stove. It took me almost an hour. When I finished, the kitchen was spotless, but I was exhausted. I went up to my room past 10 o'clock at night. I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed. My shoes were worn out. My feet hurt. My hands smelled like soap and detergent. I heard voices in the next room. Serena and Mrs. Eleanor were talking. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was low, conspiratorial. I lay down and closed my eyes, trying not to think about anything. The next morning, I woke up at 6, as always. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee. I took bread out of the freezer and put it in the oven to warm. I cut fresh fruit, pineapple and melon, and arranged them on a plate. Mrs. Eleanor came down at 7. She wore a cream-coloured housecoat and pink slippers. She sat at the table without greeting me. "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. Did you rest well?" "More or less. The bed is very hard. My back hurt all night." "I can get you a softer mattress if you like." "Don't worry, I'll get used to it." I served her coffee, this time without sugar. She drank a sip and nodded slightly. Serena came down shortly after. She poured herself coffee and sat down next to her mother. The two of them began to talk to each other, ignoring me. They talked about furniture, about how to reorganize the spaces, about what things needed to be removed to make room for Mrs. Eleanor's belongings. "I think that bookshelf in the hallway is useless. It's too old. We can donate it and put Mum's cabinet there." The bookshelf in the hallway had been bought by my husband 20 years ago. It held our books, our photographs, memories of trips we took together. That bookshelf has sentimental value to me. Serena looked at me as if she had just remembered I was there. "Emma, we can't keep everything because of sentimental feelings. We need space. Besides, it's all scratched and faded. But I can sand it, paint it again. It's not worth it. We already decided." And that was that. That same afternoon, they brought Mrs. Eleanor's cabinet and put my bookshelf out on the curb. They left it next to the trash. I walked by there before the garbage truck arrived and saw someone take it away in a pickup truck. That night, when everyone was asleep, I went down to the living room and saw the new cabinet in the place where mine had been. It was made of dark wood, heavy, imposing, and completely empty of memories. The first week with Mrs. Eleanor in the house was just the beginning. The second week was when I truly understood that nothing would ever be the same. One Monday morning, I went down to the kitchen and found all my pots and pans out of the cabinets. They were stacked on the table, next to the sink, on the floor. Mrs. Eleanor was standing in front of the open cupboard, examining every space with her hands on her hips. "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. Are you looking for something?" She turned around with no expression on her face. "I'm reorganizing the kitchen. There are too many things here that aren't used. I need space for my utensils." I looked at my pots and pans. I had used them all my life. Each one had a story. The large steel pot was for making Sunday turkey broth. The medium one was for daily rice. The small one was for heating milk at night. But I use all those pots and pans. Not all of them. Some are so old they don't even shine anymore. Look at this one. It has stains that won't come out. She held up my favorite pot, the one my mother gave me when I got married. It had been used for 40 years, it's true. It was worn, with marks on the base, but it still worked perfectly. "I'm only going to keep the ones that are useful. The rest we are going to donate." She didn't ask me. She didn't wait for my opinion. She simply began to separate my things into two groups, the ones she considered useful and the ones she didn't. She ended up leaving only 3 pots. The rest, 6 in total, she put in a cardboard box and left it next to the back door. "A man is coming tomorrow to pick up donations. He's going to take this." I stood there, with a knot in my throat, watching my belongings being packed away like trash. That same afternoon, Serena came home with more boxes. They were her mother's kitchen utensils: wooden spoons, old knives, scratched frying pans, stained cutting boards. She arranged them in the spaces that were now empty. My kitchen no longer looked like my kitchen. The next day was worse. Mrs. Eleanor decided that the living room needed changes. She got up early before I did, and when I went downstairs, she had already moved the furniture. The sofa where I used to sit was now against the opposite wall. The small end table that held my husband's magazines was in the hallway. The curtains that I had sewn myself were folded in a bag. Serena was helping her hang new curtains. They were made of thick, brown fabric that blocked almost all the natural light. "Do you like them, Emma? They're from Mum's previous living room. Much better than those sheer curtains you had." But I liked my curtains. They let the sunlight in. I liked seeing the garden from the window while I drank my coffee. "Yes, they look good," I lied, because I no longer had the strength to tell the truth. The following days were a constant parade of changes. Every morning I woke up and found something new out of place. My family photos were taken down from the walls and stored in a box. In their place, photos of Mrs. Eleanor's family were hung. People I didn't know, looking at me from the frames with serious faces. My garden plants were pruned even more. Serena hired the same man with the electric trimmer again. This time he cut the jasmine almost to the root. She said they were invading the patio space and that her mother needed a place to put a chair and sunbathe. My geraniums were pulled out and replaced by succulent plants that Mrs. Eleanor brought from her old apartment. "Plants that don't need much care," she said. "More practical." Practical. That word started to haunt me. Everything I had, everything I did, was considered impractical, unnecessary, obsolete. One afternoon I was folding clean laundry in my room when Serena walked in without knocking. She approached the closet and opened it as if it were hers. "Emma, you're going to have to take some of your things out of here. Mom needs more space for her clothes. Half of her closet is still in boxes because everything won't fit." "But this is my closet." "I know, but it's only temporary. We just need you to share the space. It's not that hard, is it?" She began to take out my dresses, my tops, my skirts. She put them on the bed in messy piles. Then she left and came back with her mother's clothes. Grey dresses, beige tops, heavy sweaters, that smelled like mothballs. She hung them in my closet, taking up more than half the space. My things were crammed into a corner, wrinkled, pressed together. Done. That's better distributed. She left without closing the door. I sat on the bed and looked at my piled-up clothes. I felt something break inside me, something small, but important, like a crack in a glass that hasn't fallen yet, but can no longer hold water without leaking. At dinners, Mrs. Eleanor began to criticize everything I cooked. If I made soup, it was too watery. If I made rice, it was too dry. If I made meatloaf, it was too tough. Nothing was good. Serena always backed up her mother. She nodded, agreed, and added her own complaints. Robert ate in silence, his gaze fixed on his plate, as if he didn't hear anything. One night, I dared to ask him after everyone had gone to sleep. "Robert, do you think my food is bad?" He looked up from his cell phone. "No, Mum. Your food is fine." Then why don't you say anything when they complain? He shrugged. I don't want trouble. It's better to let things flow. Let things flow. Those were his words, as if what was happening was something natural, something inevitable. The next day, Serena announced that she was going to cook, that her mother had taught her some recipes that were healthier, more modern, more balanced. She prepared boiled chicken with unsalted vegetables. It tasted like nothing, but everyone ate without complaining. Mrs. Eleanor even smiled. This is delicious, honey. This is how food should be, simple and healthy. That night I went to bed without dinner. I wasn't hungry, or maybe I was too hungry for something that wasn't food. The weeks passed, and the invasions continued. Mrs. Eleanor began to use my bathroom. She said the one in her room had low water pressure. She left her things there. Her toothbrush, her face cream, her medications. I had to move my own things to make room for her. One day, I went into the bathroom and found my toothbrush in the trash. It was still wet. Someone had used it and then thrown it away. I left the bathroom with the toothbrush in my hand and looked for Serena. Who threw away my toothbrush? She looked at me as if she didn't understand the question. Oh, that was Mum. She said it looked really old. She bought you a new one. It's on the counter. I saw the new toothbrush. It was green, with hard bristles, the kind that hurt my gums. But my toothbrush was fine. I didn't need a new one. Emma, don't make a big deal over a toothbrush. It's a gesture of goodwill. A gesture of goodwill. As if throwing away my things without permission was a favor. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake thinking about everything I had lost in such a short time. My space, my things, my voice, my place at the table. And no one seemed to notice. Or maybe they did notice, but they didn't care. The next morning, I went down to the kitchen and found the two of them sitting at the table, drinking coffee, talking quietly. They stopped talking when they saw me walk in. Good morning, they replied with a murmur. Then they continued talking among themselves, this time in whispers. I poured myself coffee and sat down in my new chair, the one near the wall, the one that no longer had a view of anything. Serena set her mug down on the table with a soft clunk. Emma, we have to talk about something important. My heart started beating faster. Mum isn't comfortable sharing the spaces. She needs her privacy. So we thought it would be better if you used the living room and dining room less. That way she can be more relaxed during the day. Less of the living room and dining room? But where do you want me to be? In your room, or in the kitchen when you need to cook. But the rest of the time, it would be better if you gave Mum space, Mrs. Peel. Eleanor looked at me without blinking, waiting for my answer. But this is my house. The words came out before I could stop them. Serena frowned. It's everyone's house, Emma, and we all have to make sacrifices to live together in harmony. Mom is older. She needs peace and quiet. You are younger. You can adapt. Younger. I was 60 years old. Mrs. Eleanor was 68. Only 8 years difference. But for them, those 8 years were enough to justify that I should be the one to give in, the one to adapt, the one to disappear. It's fine. I said that because I didn't know what else to say anymore. And from that day on, I became a shadow in my own house. 3 weeks passed since they asked me to stop using the living room and dining room. 3 weeks in which I stayed locked in my room most of the day. I only went down to cook, to clean, to serve. Then I went back upstairs like a ghost. Mrs. Eleanor had completely taken over the house. Her clothes occupied almost all of my closet. Her things were in every corner. Her plants had replaced mine in the yard. Her presence filled every space to the point that I no longer knew where to stand without being in the way. One Saturday morning, Serena came up to my room. She didn't knock on the door. She just walked in with an expression I couldn't read. "Emma, we need to talk." I sat on the edge of my bed. She stood in front of me, her arms crossed. "Mom and I have been thinking. This house is big, yes, but it's not enough for 4 people living permanently. We need more space, more organization." I nodded, not understanding where she was going with this. "So we decided that we are going to do some renovations. We are going to enlarge Mum's room. We are going to tear down the wall that separates her room from this small bathroom, which we hardly use. That way she will have her own private bathroom and more space for her things." "But I use that bathroom." "You don't need it anymore. You can use the main bathroom that is next to our room. It's no big deal, Emma. It's just a bathroom." It wasn't just a bathroom. It was the last space that still felt like mine. But none of that mattered anymore. "When are you going to start?" "Next week. I already hired the contractor. It's going to cost about $2,500, but it's worth it. Mum needs to be comfortable." $2,500. To break my house. To take another piece of what was mine. "And where are you going to get that money?" Serena looked at me impatiently. "From the household savings. Robert and I handle the finances now. You don't have to worry about that." The household savings. The money I had saved for years. The money that gave me security. That allowed me to sleep peacefully knowing that I had something for emergencies. They never asked me. They never asked for my permission. They simply took my money and decided to use it. It's fine. Those 2 words were the only ones coming out of my mouth lately. It's fine. Even though nothing was fine. The construction workers arrived the following Monday. 2 men in dirty overalls and heavy tools. They started working early, tearing down walls, raising dust, making a deafening noise that filled the whole house. I stayed in the kitchen most of the day, my hands over my ears, trying not to listen to them destroy my home. Mrs. Eleanor sat in the living room, calm, drinking tea, as if nothing was happening. From time to time, she got up and went upstairs to check the work. She gave instructions, asked for changes, pointed out details. Serena was with her, nodding at every word, taking notes on her cell phone. No one asked me what I thought. No one consulted me if I agreed. I was invisible. The work lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks of constant noise, dust in the air, unknown men coming and going from my house. In the end, Eleanor had a huge room with a private bathroom, a new light wood closet, with shelves for all her things. My bathroom had disappeared. The space where I used to brush my hair at night, where I washed my face every morning, no longer existed. Now I had to walk down the hall to the other bathroom, the bathroom that was next to Robert and Serena's room. And every time I used it, I felt like I was invading their space, even though it was my own house. One night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I went down to the kitchen to get water. I was thirsty, but I also needed to get out of my room. I felt like the walls were crushing me. I turned on the light and froze. There were papers on the table, documents. I recognized them immediately. They were the house papers, the deed, the property title. I approached slowly. My name was there. Emma Valdez, sole owner of this dwelling. But next to the papers were other documents, new ones, with small letters and official stamps. I took them with trembling hands and began to read. It was an assignment of rights contract, a document that transferred the ownership of the house to Robert Valdez's name. My heart stopped beating for a second. I kept reading. There was a line at the end, a space for a signature. My signature. But the space was empty. They hadn't made me sign yet. But that was the plan. That was the real plan. They wanted to take my house. I left the papers on the table exactly as I had found them. I turned off the light. I went up to my room, my legs shaking. I sat on the bed and tried to breathe, but the air didn't reach my lungs. I felt a pressure in my chest that wouldn't go away. I thought about confronting Robert, about asking him what all that meant, but I knew what his answer would be. He would tell me it was for my own good, that it was easier this way, that I was old anyway, and he could handle things better. I thought about talking to Serena, but she would only tell me that I didn't understand, that I was exaggerating, that it was a simple legal formality. I had no one to turn to. I had no one on my side. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling everything I had built in my life crumble. The next morning, I went down to the kitchen as always. I made coffee. I took bread out of the oven. I set the table. Mrs. Eleanor came down first. She sat down without greeting me. I served her coffee in silence. Serena arrived shortly after. She took her mug and sat next to her mother. The two of them began to talk about their plans for the day. Robert didn't come down. He had left early for the shop without saying goodbye. I stood by the sink, my hands clasped on the edge, listening to them talk about my house as if it were already theirs. I think we should change the living room floor. These wooden boards are too worn out. You're right, honey. A ceramic tile floor would look much better, more modern, and we could also paint the walls. This beige color is really out of style. They were talking about changes that would cost thousands of dollars, changes they would make with my money, in my house, without my permission. I turned around and looked at them. Are you going to change the floor? Serena looked up as if she had just remembered I was there. Yes, we are thinking of doing it next month. Why? Because this floor was put in by my husband with his own hands. It took him 2 months to finish it. He measured, cut, and sanded every board himself. There was an uncomfortable silence. Mrs. Eleanor took a sip of coffee without taking her eyes off me. I understand it has sentimental value, Emma, but old things have to be renovated. You can't live in the past. It's not living in the past. It's respecting what was done with love. Serena set her mug down on the table with a sharp clunk. Look, Emma, I understand that it's hard for you to adapt, but this house needs changes. It needs to be modernized. And if we are all going to live here, we have to make decisions together. Together? No one consults me about anything. No one asks for my opinion. You just decide, and I have to accept. Mrs. Eleanor calmly got up from the table. She looked at me with those cold, piercing eyes. I think you are exaggerating. No one is disrespecting you. We are just trying to make things better for everyone. She turned and left the kitchen. Serena followed her without saying another word. I was left alone in the kitchen, with the coffee still warm in the coffee pot and tears threatening to spill. But I didn't cry. I had no more tears left. That afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I found more documents. They were in a drawer of Mrs. Eleanor's new cabinet. I wasn't looking for them. The drawer was open, and I saw them by chance. They were quotes from retirement homes, places for seniors, with photos of small rooms, of white hallways, of yards with benches. There were 3 different quotes. The cheapest cost $900 a month. The most expensive, $1,400. I understood everything at that moment. They didn't just want the house, they wanted to get rid of me. The plan was complete. First, they would take my house by putting it in Robert's name. Then they would convince me that it was better for me to live in a place where there were people my age, where they would take care of me, where I wouldn't be a burden. And I would end up in a small room, alone, waiting to die. I closed the drawer carefully. I left the living room. I went up to my room. I sat on the bed and looked around. This room that was no longer completely mine. This closet that I shared with a stranger. This house that I was losing piece by piece. And for the first time in months, I felt something different from sadness. I felt rage, a cold, silent rage that began to grow in my chest like a small but constant flame. And at that moment, I knew I had to do something. Something they didn't expect. Something that would change everything. But I didn't know what yet. The days that followed were the most difficult of my life. Not because things got physically worse, but because something inside me had changed. I was no longer the same woman who accepted everything in silence. The rage I felt that afternoon didn't go away. It stayed there, growing, taking shape. But I didn't say anything. I didn't make a scene. I continued with my routine as always. I got up early, prepared breakfast, cleaned the house, cooked, and did the laundry. But now every action had a different weight. Every step I took was measured, observed by my own eyes as if I were watching myself from the outside. Mrs. Eleanor and Serena continued with their plans. The living room floor was changed 2 weeks later. They ripped out the wooden boards that my husband had put in so carefully and replaced them with grey ceramic tile. Cold, impersonal, soulless. The day the installation was finished, Serena called me to see the result. "Look how good it looks, Emma. Much better than before, don't you think?" I stood in the doorway. The floor shone under the afternoon light, but I only saw the emptiness of everything that had been erased. "Yes, it looks fine." My voice sounded hollow, but they didn't notice, or they didn't care. Mrs. Eleanor walked into the living room and walked slowly across the new floor. Her slippers made a soft sound against the ceramic. "This is a decent floor. The other one was rotten. It was shameful to look at." Rotten. That word hurt me more than anything else. My husband was not a rich man, but he was hard-working. Everything he did in this house he did with his own hands, with love, with patience. And now all that was called rotten. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I went down to the living room. I turned on a small lamp and sat in the armchair that was now shoved against the wall. I looked at the new floor. I ran my hand over the cold surface, and for the first time in weeks, I cried. I cried silently, my hands over my mouth so no one would hear me. I cried for my husband, for this house, for everything I was losing without being able to defend it. But when I finished crying, I wiped my tears and made a decision. I was not going to let them destroy me. I was not going to end up in a retirement home while they enjoyed what I had built. I was not going to sign any paper that took my house away from me. I was going to fight, but not in the way they expected. The next day, while Serena and Mrs. Eleanor went out shopping, I picked up the phone and called a number I had saved years ago. It was the number of a lawyer who had helped my husband with the house paperwork when we bought it. I didn't know if he was still working. I didn't know if he would remember me, but I had to try. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. "Hello, Victor Salinas' office." A woman's voice, young, professional. "Good morning. My name is Emma Valdez. I need to speak to Mr. Salinas. It's urgent." "What is this about, ma'am?" "It's about my house. I need legal advice." There was a pause. Hold music played for almost a minute, then a deeper, more tired male voice. "Mrs. Valdez, this is Victor Salinas. How can I help you?" "Mr. Salinas, I don't know if you remember me. You helped my husband many years ago with the deed to our house." "Of course I remember you. How are you? How is your husband?" "My husband passed away 7 years ago." "I'm very sorry to hear that. He was a good man. What do you need?" I took a deep breath before speaking. I need to know if someone can take my house away from me without my consent. If they can make me sign papers without me understanding what I'm signing. There was silence on the other end of the line. Mrs. Valdez, are you in any kind of danger? Is someone pressuring you? Yes, my daughter-in-law and her mother. I found assignment of rights documents. I think they want me to sign to transfer the house to my son's name. Listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. If the house is in your name, no one can take it from you without your signature. And if someone pressures you to sign something you don't want to sign, that's illegal. Do you understand me? Yes. Do you want to maintain ownership of your house? Yes. It's the only thing I have left. Then don't sign anything. Absolutely nothing. Not even if they tell you it's just a simple procedure. Can you come to my office? I don't know if I can leave without them suspecting anything. Then I will come to your house, tomorrow afternoon, at 3 o'clock. Can you receive me? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Salinas. You don't have to thank me. This is the right thing to do. I hung up the phone and stood in the kitchen, my heart pounding. I had taken the first step. Now I just had to wait. The next day, Serena and Mrs. Eleanor left after lunch. They said they were going to look for fabrics for the new curtains they wanted to put in the dining room. I just nodded. At 3 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Mr. Salinas standing on the porch. He was an older man, about 70, with completely white hair and thin-framed glasses. He carried a brown leather briefcase and a well-pressed grey suit. Mrs. Valdez, it's good to see you. Likewise, Mr. Salinas. Please come in. We went into the living room. He sat on the sofa and I sat in the armchair across from him. I took out the papers I had found and handed them to him. He reviewed them in silence for several minutes. His expression hardened with each page. This is very serious, Mrs. Valdez. This document is designed for you to relinquish all your rights to this property. If you sign this, the house will no longer be yours. I knew it. Does your son know that you found these papers? No. No one knows. Is he involved in this? I don't know. I think so, but I'm not sure. He never talks to me about these things. The lawyer put the papers on the table. Mrs. Valdez, I'm going to be very clear with you. These people are trying to steal your assets, and they are doing it in a way that could look legal if you sign without realizing it. But you have rights, and I can help you protect them. What can I do? First, don't sign anything. Second, if they insist, you call me immediately. Third, you need to think about what you really want. Do you want to continue living here with them? Or do you want to regain your peace of mind, even if that means making difficult decisions? I don't know. I just know that I don't want to lose my house. He nodded. Then, we are going to protect your house. I am going to draft a document that makes it clear that you are the sole owner and that any attempt at transfer without your explicit consent will be void. I will also place an alert on the public registry so that no one can do paperwork behind your back. How much will all that cost? $300. But if you don't have that money now, we can arrange it later. No, I do have it. I have savings that they don't know about. I got up and went up to my room. In the back of my closet, hidden inside a box of old shoes, I had a cookie tin. Inside, I kept bills that I had been saving for years. Money from the pension checks that came in. Money that I never spent because I had nothing to spend it on. I took out $400 and went back down. Here you go. Take $400. Keep the $100 extra in case I need anything else. He took the money and put it in his briefcase. I'm going to start the paperwork tomorrow morning. In 1 week, all your documents will be protected. Meanwhile, Be vigilant, and if anything happens, call me at any time." He handed me his card with his personal number written on the back. "Thank you, Mr. Salinas. You don't know how much this means to me." "I know exactly what it means. I've seen many cases like yours, and it always hurts to see how family can be the worst enemy." He stood up and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned and looked at me seriously. "Mrs. Valdez, you are stronger than you think. Don't give up." "I won't." I closed the door and leaned against it. I felt something like hope. Something small, fragile, but real. That night, during dinner, Serena kept looking at me strangely, as if she knew something, as if she had detected a change in me. "Are you okay, Emma? You look different." "I'm fine, just tired." She didn't stop looking at me. Mrs. Eleanor also watched me in silence. "Did you have visitors today?" My heart sped up. "No. Why?" "Nothing. Just asking." But I knew they suspected something. Maybe a neighbor saw them. Maybe they noticed something out of place. I finished dinner quickly and went up to my room. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. Every noise in the house put me on alert. Every step in the hallway made me think they were coming to confront me, but no one came. And while I waited in the dark, I thought about what the lawyer had said. "You are stronger than you think." Maybe he was right. Maybe there was still some strength left in me, something they hadn't managed to destroy. 1 week after Mr. Salinas's visit, I received a call. It was early in the morning. Serena and Mrs. Eleanor were still sleeping. Robert had already left for the shop. I answered quietly from the kitchen. "Hello?" "Mrs. Valdez, this is Mr. Salinas. I have good news." "Tell me." "All the documents are ready. Your house is protected. No one can do any paperwork without your physical presence and your notarized signature. I also put a note in the registry indicating that any attempt at assignment must be verified directly with you." I felt a huge weight lift from my shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Salinas. I can't thank you enough." "There is something else I need to tell you. Yesterday I received an inquiry at my office. A man asking about assignment of rights procedures for a property in the name of Emma Valdez." My breathing stopped. "Who was it?" "He didn't give his full name. He just said he was a relative of yours. I told him that those types of procedures require the presence of the owner and very specific documentation. He left without leaving any information. It was Robert, or someone sent by Serena. They were already trying to move the pieces." "What do I do now?" "Now you have to make a decision, Mrs. Valdez. You can confront them and make it clear that you know what they are planning, or you can wait and see how far they go. But I warn you, if you wait too long, they might try something more drastic." "Like what?" "A declaration of mental incapacity, an attempt at guardianship. These things happen more often than you think. If they manage to convince a judge that you are not in a condition to manage your assets, they can take legal control of your property." "That's illegal." "Yes, if it's done falsely. But first, the falsity has to be proven. And that takes time. Time during which you could lose everything. Then I have to act fast." "Exactly. And you have to be smart. Don't give them reasons to say that you are unstable or confused. Stay calm, lucid, strong." "I will." "If you need anything, call me at any time." "Thank you, Mr. Salinas." I hung up the phone and stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling. I knew I had to do something decisive, something that would change everything at once, but I still didn't know exactly what. That same afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I heard voices in Mrs. Eleanor's room. The door was ajar. I approached without making a sound. It was Serena and her mother talking. I already talked to a different lawyer. He told me that if she signs a power of attorney, we can handle everything without problems. And how do we convince her to sign? We tell her it's to make things easier for her. That way she doesn't have to worry about paying bills or doing paperwork. That we will take care of everything. And if she refuses, then we use Plan B. We take her to a doctor who will certify that she is losing her memory, that she can no longer make decisions. With that, it's enough to start a legal process. But she's perfectly fine. Any doctor would realize it. Not if we go to the right doctor, one who understands the situation. I already have a contact. It will cost about $500, but it's worth it. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. They were planning to declare me incapable. They were willing to lie, to falsify medical documents, to destroy my reputation just to get my house. I backed away from the door in silence. I went up to my room with slow steps, trying to stay calm. I closed the door and sat on the bed. My mind was working fast. I needed a plan. I needed something to stop them once and for all. And then I knew. I knew exactly what I had to do. I couldn't keep living here. I couldn't keep sharing space with people who saw me as an obstacle. If I stayed, they would eventually find a way to take everything from me. But if I left and took my house with me, not physically, of course, but legally, I could sell the house. I could sell it quickly without telling them anything, and with that money start over somewhere else. A small place, just for me, where no one could invade me ever again. The idea scared me. Selling the house where I had lived for 30 years, the house I had built with my husband. But that house was no longer the same. Every corner had been changed. Every space had been invaded. There was nothing left of what it was. It was just a shell filled with bad memories. The next day, I called Mr. Salinas again. Mr. Salinas, I want to sell my house. There was a silence. Are you sure about that, Mrs. Valdez? Yes. It's the only way to protect myself. If I stay here, they will keep trying to take it from me. But if I sell it first, they won't have anything to steal. That is a very brave decision, and very intelligent. Do you need help with the process? Yes, I need it to be fast. And discreet. They can't find out until it's done. I know a trustworthy real estate agent. He can come and appraise the property and put it on the market immediately. But I need you to understand something. Selling fast means selling cheaper. If you want the best price, you need time. I don't have time. I need to sell it as soon as possible. Understood. I will give you the agent's contact. His name is Salvador Mendoza. Tell him you were referred by me. Thank you, Mr. Salinas. Mrs. Valdez, one more thing. When you sell the house, where are you going to live? I don't know yet, but I'll find something. If you need references for places, I can help you. I have contacts with people who rent small, safe apartments at a good price. I would really appreciate that. I hung up the phone and immediately called the real estate agent. Salvador Mendoza answered on the second ring. He had a kind, professional voice. I explained the situation to him in a few words. He understood immediately. I can come tomorrow afternoon to appraise the property. I need to take photos, measure, and check the general condition. Will anyone else be in the house? Yes, but they can't know what you are here for. I can say I'm a city inspector, that I'm checking building code compliance. It's something that won't arouse suspicion. Perfect. The next day, Salvador arrived at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He was a man about 40 years old, with a tablet under his arm and a camera hanging from his neck. He wore a fake City Hall ID on a lanyard. Serena opened the door. He showed his ID and explained that he was there to check the recent modifications made to the property. Serena frowned, but let him in. I was in the kitchen making coffee. Salvador came in and gave me a discreet nod. He began to walk around the house, taking photos, measuring walls, checking windows. He acted so naturally that even I almost believed him. Mrs. Eleanor followed him for a while, watching him, but eventually got tired and returned to her room. When Salvador finished, he approached me in the kitchen. He spoke in a low voice. "The house is in good condition. It needs some minor repairs, but nothing serious. I can put it on the market for $180,000. If you want to sell quickly, we can go down to $160,000. How long would it take to sell it at that price?" 2 weeks, maybe less. It's a good area. There is demand. Then let's do it. $160,000, as quickly as possible. He nodded. "I'm going to need you to sign some papers. I can take them to a notary so that everything is legal. I'll bring you the documents tomorrow." "Thank you." He left the house, and Serena said goodbye to him at the door. When she returned to the kitchen, she looked at me suspiciously. "What were you talking about?" "He was asking me about the modifications you made to your mother's room, if we had the corresponding permits." "And do we?" "That's something you should know, Serena. You were the ones who hired the construction workers." She didn't say anything else, but I know she didn't entirely believe me. The following days were the most tense. Salvador came back with the papers. I signed them secretly while they were out. The documents were notarized. The house was put on the market privately, without public announcement. 3 days later, Salvador called me. "I have 2 offers, one for $155,000, another for $160,000. Both buyers are ready to close in a week." "I accept the one for $160,000. "Excellent decision. I will proceed with the closing. In 1 week, the money will be in your account, and the house will have a new owner." I hung up the phone with my heart pounding. I had done it. I had sold my house without them finding out. Now I just had to wait for the sale to close. And then I had to plan my exit. That night, during dinner, Serena brought up the subject of the assignment papers again. "Emma, we need you to sign some documents. It's just to facilitate the management of the house. Nothing important." She put the papers on the table, the same ones I had seen weeks ago. I looked at them without touching them. "I'm not going to sign anything." Serena blinked in surprise. "Excuse me?" "I said I'm not going to sign anything. This house is mine, and it will continue to be mine until I decide otherwise." Mrs. Eleanor put her fork down on the plate with a sharp clunk. "What's wrong with you, Emma? Why are you being difficult?" "I'm not being difficult. I'm just defending what's mine." Robert, who had been eating in silence, finally spoke. "Mum, just sign. It's easier this way." I looked him in the eyes. My son, the man I had raised, and I barely recognized him. "I'm not going to sign, Robert, and if you keep pressuring me, I'm going to take legal action." Serena got up from the table in a fury. "Legal action? Are you threatening us?" "I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you." I left the kitchen and went up to my room. I locked the door. I heard shouting downstairs, arguing. But I didn't go down. I sat on the bed and waited. I just had to wait 1 more week. 1 week and everything would be over. The longest week of my life began that night. After I refused to sign the papers, the house became a silent battlefield. Serena and Mrs. Eleanor stopped talking to me directly. They ignored me as if I were just another piece of furniture, an unimportant object that simply took up space. When I entered a room, they left. When I spoke, they pretended not to hear me. Silence was their new weapon. Robert didn't speak to me either. He came home late from the shop, ate what I left on the stove, and locked himself in his room with Serena. I heard them arguing quietly, planning things that I couldn't fully understand, but knew weren't good for me. I stayed calm. Every morning I got up, prepared breakfast, even though no one thanked me, cleaned the house, even though no one noticed, and continued with my routine as if nothing were happening. But inside, I was counting the days, the hours, the minutes, until the sale closed and I could finally free myself. On Tuesday of that week, I found something that chilled my blood. I was tidying up the living room when I saw a manila envelope on the dining room table. It was open. Inside were documents from a psychiatric clinic, mental evaluation forms, and applications for certification of incapacity. And my name was written on each of them in clear, precise handwriting. They had moved forward with their plan. They had obtained the forms. All that was left was to take me to the corrupt doctor that Serena had mentioned so he could sign what they needed. Once they had that paper, they could legally declare me incapable of managing my own affairs. And then they would take everything from me without me being able to do anything. I took photos of the documents with my old cell phone. Then I left them exactly where I had found them. I couldn't let them know that I was aware. I had to keep acting normal, vulnerable, defeated. They had to believe that they had won. That afternoon, I called Mr. Salinas and sent him the photos. He called me back in less than 10 minutes, and his voice sounded worried and angry at the same time. Mrs. Valdez, this is very serious. They are preparing fraudulent documentation. If they manage to get a false medical signature and present it to a judge, even temporarily, they could freeze your accounts and take control of your assets. We have to speed everything up. When is the house sale closing? Next Monday. 5 days away. 5 days is a long time. They could act sooner. You need to be alert. If they try to take you to any medical appointment that you haven't requested, refuse absolutely. If necessary, call the police. And if you see the situation getting dangerous, leave that house immediately. Where can I go? I can help you with that. I have a small apartment that I rent out. It's empty right now. You can stay there until the sale closes, and you have the money to settle somewhere else permanently. I won't charge you rent. I just need you to stay safe. I felt like crying, but I held back. This man who barely knew me was doing more for me than my own family. Thank you, Mr. Salinas. I don't know how to repay you for everything you are doing for me. You don't have to repay me anything. Just promise me that you will take care of yourself and that you won't let them destroy you. I promise. On Wednesday evening, Serena called me into the living room. Her tone was different, softer, kinder. That immediately put me on guard because I knew that when she used that voice, it was because she wanted something. Emma, my mother and I have been thinking. Maybe we were too hard on you these last few days. We want to fix things. We want us to be a united family again. I sat down in the armchair without saying anything. I just watched her, Mrs. Eleanor was sitting next to her, nodding with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. We have decided that tomorrow the three of us are going out. A girls' day out. We are going to go to the mall, have a nice lunch, and relax. We need to reconnect. What do you think? It sounded like a trap, and it probably was, but I needed to know exactly what they were planning. That sounds fine to me. What time are we leaving? 10 o'clock in the morning. Dress comfortably. We are going to be walking a lot. I barely slept that night. I knew the trip to the mall was an excuse. They probably wanted to take me to that corrupt doctor, have him evaluate me, have him sign a paper saying that I was losing my mind, that I was no longer capable of making coherent decisions. And once they had that document, Everything else would be a matter of paperwork. I packed a small bag with the essentials. My fully charged cell phone, some cash I had hidden, Mr. Salinas's card, and a copy of the house deed that proved I was the sole owner. If things got ugly, if they tried to lock me up somewhere or force me to do something I didn't want to, I was going to call the lawyer and, if necessary, the police. At 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, I went downstairs dressed in comfortable clothes, as Serena had suggested. They were already waiting for me by the door. Mrs. Eleanor was carrying her large brown leather purse. Serena had the car keys in her hand. "Ready for a fun day, Emma? You're going to love what we have planned." Her smile was fake, forced, like a badly placed mask. We got into the car. Serena was driving. Mrs. Eleanor was in the passenger seat. I was in the back, looking out the window, memorizing the route just in case I needed to escape. We took the main avenue toward downtown, but after 20 minutes, Serena turned off onto an area that I didn't know well. Narrower streets, older buildings, fewer people walking. "Where are we going? This is not the way to the mall." Serena looked at me in the rearview mirror, and her expression completely changed. The false warmth disappeared. Now there was only coldness. "We are going to make a stop first. There is someone we want you to meet, a very good doctor who is going to help you." I felt my stomach clench. There it was, the plan I had anticipated. They were taking me to the corrupt doctor. "I don't need any doctor. I am perfectly fine." That is exactly what someone who needs help would say. "Emma, don't worry. It's just a quick evaluation. We just want to make sure you are in good health." "I am not going to see any doctor that I haven't chosen." Mrs. Eleanor turned around from the front seat with that cold look that I already knew so well. "Don't be difficult, Emma. This is for your own good. Lately, you have been very confused. You have been saying strange things. You need a professional to check you out." "I haven't said anything strange, and I am not confused. You are trying to declare me incompetent to take my house, but you are not going to succeed." Serena slammed on the brakes abruptly at a solitary corner. She turned to me with fury in her eyes. "How did you know? Who told you? Have you been talking to someone behind our backs?" "I don't need anyone to tell me anything. I found the documents. I know exactly what you are planning, and I am not going to let myself be dragged into any fake medical consultation." Mrs. Eleanor got out of the car and opened my back door. She tried to pull my arm, but I held onto the seatbelt. "Get out of the car, Emma. Right now." "No. Take me back to the house, or I'm calling the police." I took out my cell phone, but Serena tried to snatch it away from me. We struggled briefly. I managed to keep it in my hand and dialed the emergency number. Before I could press the call button, Serena stopped. "It's fine. It's fine. We'll take you back. But this is not going to end here, Emma. You can't keep being so selfish. This house belongs to Robert, too. He has the right to secure his future. The house is mine, only mine, and I will decide what happens to it." Serena started the car in a fury. The trip back was in complete silence, a dense, dangerous silence, full of unspoken threats. When we arrived at the house, I quickly got out of the car and practically ran inside. I went up to my room and locked the door. I heard them come in after me. I heard their raised voices, arguing, planning their next move. I called Mr. Salinas with trembling hands. "Mr. Salinas, they tried to take me to the doctor today. They didn't succeed, but I know they are going to try something else. I need to get out of this house." "Can you leave right now?" "Yes, I have some things packed." "Then leave. I'll send you the apartment address. The key is under the doormat. Go now before they do something worse." I hung up the phone, and grabbed the small suitcase I had prepared days ago. Inside, I had a week's worth of clothes, my important documents, and the money I had left. It was all I needed. I carefully opened my bedroom door. The hallway was empty. I walked down the stairs slowly, trying not to make a sound. Serena's and Mrs. Eleanor's voices were coming from the kitchen. I reached the front door. I turned the handle, and I left that house that was no longer my home. I walked down the street with my suitcase in my hand, feeling the afternoon sun on my face. Every step I took moved me away from that house that had been my prison for the last few months. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see the windows, the walls, the garden that I once tended with so much love. That was no longer mine. It was nothing anymore. I took a taxi on the corner. I gave the driver the address that Mr. Salinas had sent me in a text message. The trip lasted 20 minutes. 20 minutes in which my mind kept replaying everything that had happened, everything I had lost, but also everything I was about to regain. The apartment was in a simple 3-story building with a red brick facade and small windows. I went up the stairs to the second floor. I found the key under the doormat, just as the lawyer had said. I opened the door and went in. It was a small but clean space. A living room with a worn sofa, a 2-chair table, a kitchen with the basics, and a bedroom with a single bed covered with white sheets. The bathroom was tiny but functional. There was no decoration, no pictures on the walls, nothing personal, but it was a safe place. And that was the only thing that mattered at that moment. I put my suitcase on the bed and sat next to it. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe without someone watching me, judging me, planning how to destroy me. The silence of the apartment was different from the silence of that house. This was a silence of peace, not of threat. I slept better that night than I had in a long time. There were no strange noises, no conspiring voices in the next room, no nightmares of signed papers and lost houses. There was only rest. The next day, Friday morning, I received a call from Salvador Mendoza, the real estate agent. His voice sounded excited and professional at the same time. "Mrs. Valdez, I have excellent news. The buyer wants to move up the closing. Instead of waiting until Monday, he wants to close the sale tomorrow, Saturday. He is offering the $160,000 in cash, with no financing, no contingencies. It's the best offer we could have hoped for. Do you agree?" "Yes, I completely agree. The sooner, the better." "Perfect. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning at the notary's office downtown. I'll send you the exact address. Bring your ID and the original deed to the property. I'll take care of the rest." I hung up the phone with my heart racing. Everything was working out better than I had planned. In less than 24 hours, my house would be sold, and I would have the money to start a new life, away from Serena, away from Mrs. Eleanor, away from a son who had chosen his wife over his own mother. That afternoon, my cell phone started ringing non-stop. It was Robert, then Serena, then unknown numbers that were probably them using other phones. I didn't answer any calls. Messages also arrived, some pleading, others threatening, all desperate. "Mum, where are you? Come home. We can talk about this. Emma, you are making a terrible mistake. If you don't come back, we are going to have to take legal action." I didn't answer any of them. I blocked all the numbers. I had nothing more to say to them. On Saturday morning, I woke up early. I took a shower, put on my best dress, the one I had saved for special occasions. I carefully combed my hair and put on light makeup. I wanted to look good. I wanted to look strong. I wanted no one to doubt that I was in full possession of my mental faculties. I arrived at the notary's office 15 minutes before the agreed time. Salvador was already there waiting for me next to a man about 50 years old, well-dressed, with glasses and a kind smile. He was the buyer. Mrs. Valdez, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Charles Ramirez. I've seen your house, and it's exactly what I was looking for my family. I promise you we will take very good care of it. His words hurt me a little, because they reminded me of everything I was leaving behind. But they also gave me peace. At least the house would be in the hands of someone who valued it, not someone who only saw it as an object to steal. We went into the notary's office. An older man with grey hair and a serious expression greeted us. He reviewed all the documents carefully, verified my identity, and confirmed that I was the sole legal owner of the property. Then he began to read the terms of the sale. The property located at 342 Sycamore Lane will be transferred from the name of Mrs. Emma Valdez to the name of Mr. Charles Ramirez for the amount of $160,000 payable in cash at the time of signing. Mrs. Valdez declares to be in full possession of her mental faculties and to be acting of her own free will without pressure or coercion of any kind. Do you agree with these terms, Mrs. Valdez? Yes, I completely agree. I signed the papers with a steady hand. Every signature was a declaration of freedom. Every flourish was an act of self-justice. When I finished, the notary sealed the documents and handed me a certified check for $160,000. Congratulations, Mrs. Valdez. The sale is complete. The property now legally belongs to Mr. Ramirez. Charles shook my hand with warmth and respect. Thank you for trusting me, Mrs. Valdez. I wish you all the best in your new chapter. I left the notary's office with the check in my purse and a feeling of lightness that I hadn't felt in years. I had regained my life. I had regained my power. I had won. I went directly to the bank and deposited the check. The money would be available in my account in 3 business days. In the meantime, I could stay in the apartment that the lawyer had lent me. That afternoon, while drinking coffee in the small kitchen of the apartment, my cell phone rang. It was an unknown number, but this time I decided to answer. Hello? Mum, it's me. It was Robert's voice. It sounded tired, defeated. What do you want, Robert? I need to talk to you. Serena told me that you sold the house. She says it can't be true. She says you wouldn't do something like that without telling us. Well, Serena is wrong. The house is no longer mine. I sold it yesterday, and it was my right to do so because it was my property. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. But where are we going to live? The house was our home. No, Robert. The house was my home. You only lived there because I allowed you to. And instead of being grateful, you tried to steal from me. You tried to declare me incompetent. You tried to destroy me. So I made the decision to protect myself before it was too late. Mum, we never wanted to hurt you. We just wanted to secure the family's future. The future of your family, Robert, not mine. You made me feel like a stranger in my own house. You took my space, my voice, my dignity. And when that wasn't enough, you tried to take my sanity. I'm not going to apologize for protecting myself. And what's going to happen to us now? That's something you and Serena will have to figure out. The new owner gave you 30 days to vacate the property. After that, you will have to find somewhere else to live. Mum, please, you can't leave us like this. Of course I can, because that is exactly what you were planning to do to me. The difference is that I acted first. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response, and I didn't feel guilty. I only felt peace. The following days were for reorganization. I looked for a small apartment to rent permanently. I found one in a quiet neighborhood, far from everything I knew, far from everyone who had hurt me. It was a 1-bedroom apartment, with an integrated kitchen, a small balcony overlooking a park. It cost $600 a month. perfect for me. With the money from the sale, I was able to pay a year's rent in advance. I also bought new, simple but nice furniture, a comfortable bed, a cream-colored sofa, a dining table for 2 people, sheer curtains that let the sunlight in. I decorated the walls with new photos I took on my first walks through the nearby park. Flowers, trees, clear skies, images of freedom. 1 month after leaving that house, I received a message from a distant cousin. She told me that Robert, Serena, and Mrs. Eleanor had to move to a small apartment on the other side of town. An old place, with dampness problems, very similar to the apartment where Mrs. Eleanor lived before. The irony was perfect. She also told me that Serena and Robert had fought constantly, that Mrs. Eleanor complained all the time about the cramped space, that none of them were happy. And although a part of me felt sorry for Robert, most of me understood that this was justice. I began to rebuild my life from scratch. I joined a group of older women who met on Tuesdays at the neighborhood community center. Women who, like me, had gone through difficult situations, who had lost important things but had found a way to move forward. We shared stories, drank coffee, and laughed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of something again. I also picked up my forgotten hobbies. I started sewing again, something I hadn't done in years. I made new curtains for my apartment, decorative cushions, and tablecloths. Every stitch was an act of healing. I planted flowers on my balcony, red geraniums like the ones I had before. This time, no one would come to cut them without my permission. 6 months after leaving that house, I ran into Robert by chance at the grocery store. He looked thinner, more tired, older. He saw me and approached slowly. "Hello, Mum." "Hello, Robert." There was an awkward silence. He looked at the floor. I looked past him. "How have you been?" "Fine. Very well, in fact." "I'm glad." Another silence. "Mum, I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry how things turned out. It wasn't my intention for everything to end this way." I looked him in the eyes. I no longer felt rage. I only felt a calm sadness. "Robert, you made decisions. You chose to side with Serena even when you knew that what they were doing was wrong. I can't force you to change, but I also can't trust you again." "I know. I just wanted you to know that I miss you." "I missed you too, but I've learned to live without that absence now." I walked away without saying anything more, and as I walked toward the grocery store exit, I felt a huge weight lift from my shoulders. I no longer owed anyone anything. I no longer had to carry guilt that wasn't mine. Today, as I write this sitting on my balcony watching the sunset, I can say that I have finally reclaimed my life. It is not the life I had before. I don't have the big house. I don't have the physical memories of my husband in every corner. I don't have my son nearby. But I have something much more valuable. I have peace. I have dignity. I have the certainty that I made the right decisions to protect myself. To all the women who are going through something similar, I want to tell you this. It is not selfish to defend yourself. It is not cruel to protect what is yours. And it is never too late to reclaim your voice, your space, your life. It took me a while, but I did it. And you can too.